2 million airplanes might not be sold in 2025. Can you believe it? Thanks to Trump's 200% tariff policy, the American airline industry could be heading for a crash landing. So who's going to win this battle, Boeing or Trump's tax plan for disaster? Boeing's decision to shift production to Mexico sounds like a smart move, but could it be self-destruction? Boeing, the company that's pretty much America's aviation pride, decided to make a bold move by shifting some of its production to Mexico. It sounds like a vacation plan, but it's really a business strategy to save on labor costs and tap into new markets in Latin America and Asia. Why not, right? But guess who's ready to ruin the party? Trump. With his signature, America First, policy, he doesn't just make a fuss, he throws a tantrum. A 200% tariff, folks. Yes, you heard me, 200%. That's like saying, if you try to do business with anyone outside of my vision, I'm going to hit you where it hurts. Now Boeing's sitting there thinking, well, we wanted to cut costs, but now we're just going to have to charge $200 million for a plane instead of $100 million. Who's buying that? Trump's billionaire friends? Let's break this down. A 200% tariff means that Boeing's $100 million planes are suddenly worth $300 million. That's the kind of help Trump is offering. Want to make a plane in Mexico? Trump will make sure it costs 3 times more to buy it in the US. Thanks, Trump, that'll definitely help Boeing stay competitive. Now, do you think Trump's genius protectionism is helping workers? Nope, it's causing a mess. Boeing stocks dropped 8% in just 2 days after the tariff threat was made public, and investors are running for the hills. It's like Trump handed Boeing a gift, but it was poisoned. They're now scrambling to figure out how to fix a problem they didn't even create. Boeing wanted to optimize profits and compete globally, but Trump gave them a business-ending curveball. Does this really protect American workers, or does it just force companies like Boeing into a corner while foreign companies like Airbus sit back and laugh all the way to the bank? Funny how protectionism ends up helping the competition more than the company you are supposedly trying to protect, huh? Congrats to the US aviation industry, your competitors are waiting. Because of Trump's tariff, 2 million planes might not be sold in 2025. That's a staggering amount of lost revenue. If Boeing can't sell planes because of insane tariffs, the US aviation industry will take a massive hit. Who's stepping up to take over that market share? Airbus and China's Comac. While Trump's tariff train wreck is derailing Boeing, these guys are just waiting for their moment to shine. Airbus is loving this. China's Comac is probably sending Trump a thank you card. They're expanding, capitalizing on Boeing's loss, and making moves where Trump's policies are leaving Boeing in the dust. Meanwhile, Boeing is stuck in a quagmire trying to figure out how to navigate this disaster. But hey, Trump's playing chess, right? Except he's playing with pieces already crushed under the weight of his own tariff, and Boeing is just trying to get one pawn to the other side without it being blown up by an exploding tariff. Great strategy. While Boeing struggles to survive Trump's economic minefield, Airbus and Comac are racing ahead. They're opening new production facilities in places that aren't burdened by unpredictable US tariffs. The EU and China are looking very comfortable in the aviation game while Boeing is left playing catch-up. Airbus has gained 25% market share in the last 2 years while Boeing has been trying to figure out how to deal with a lunatic protectionist policy. That's a pretty nice slice of the pie. Trump's protective efforts have only managed to close the kitchen door for Boeing, while competitors are dancing in the kitchen. Now the real question is whether Boeing can survive Trump's protectionist tariffs or whether they will have to adapt to survive in an increasingly globalized aviation market. Will they have to eat humble pie and realize Trump's policies are wrecking their chances? Trump, proudly flaunting his golf victory, is ignoring the fact that the US economy is sinking into an economic storm like never before. Millions of Americans are showing discontent as the market loses control, collapsing alongside Trump's tax and golf theory. As Trump boarded Air Force One after leaving Mar-a-Lago, he not only boasted about his golf victory but also confidently declared that the market needs to suffer to heal. Meanwhile, the U.S. stock market had its worst day in decades, with both the Dow and S&P hitting their lowest points. The crisis didn't just affect the U.S., it spread globally. Japan's stock market even had to halt trading due to the uncontrollable downturn. Surely Trump didn't anticipate that his own decisions would push the economy into this state, yet he refuses to take responsibility, insisting it's the necessary medicine. But is it really healing the economy, or is it just a convenient excuse for failure? Returning to the White House, Trump spoke about taking in over $1 trillion from tariffs already instituted. He claimed the country was stronger and would eventually become the most dominant economically in the world. But the world reacted differently. America is being isolated. Countries around the world are upset with the trade war. China was the first to respond, imposing tariffs on U.S. goods and seeking agreements with other partners. The European Union criticized Trump's tax policies as a major blow to the global economy. Japan and Canada also warned about the impact on the global financial system. All these nations are concerned that America's isolation could have severe consequences for itself and its allies. As the stock market plunges, Americans are beginning to feel the tangible failure of Trump's policies. Workers, farmers, and small businesses are bearing the brunt of these tariffs. American farmers are facing skyrocketing costs for fertilizer and fuel, driving up production costs while other nations stop buying their products. Small businesses can no longer absorb rising costs and are shutting down, leaving thousands unemployed. Yet Trump insists America will come back strong. But can the American people still believe these promises when they are confronted with the painful reality that his policies are weakening their economy? Experts and the press continue to criticize these tariff policies as ill-considered and counterproductive. Trump may take pride in his decisions, but the American people are paying the price. Every decision Trump makes seems to slip the U.S. economy further into deadlock. These trade wars don't just harm the economy, they push the country toward a potential long-term recession. International partners continue to protest, causing the U.S. to become more isolated in the global marketplace. Trump refuses to quit the game, and the story continues to unfold as his decisions create unpredictable impacts. Trump shouts, "I'm saving America with tariffs," but the stock market silently free falls like an out-of-control airplane. And now you're the one paying the price. As soon as Trump returns to Washington, the U.S. stock market doesn't even get a chance to breathe. The S&P 500 drops more than 20% from its February peak, marking one of the sharpest declines in history. Minutes after rumors spread about a 90-day tariff pause, the market immediately goes green. But when Trump denies the rumor and calls it fake news, the market drops back down like a ship without brakes. This level of chaos is truly unprecedented. Indexes keep bouncing up and down, nothing resembling a stable market. Retirement accounts are vanishing quickly while investors can only shake their heads at the unexplainable mess. Trump's tariff decisions have caused massive disruption, leaving America's economic foundation less solid than before. It's been universally derided as unserious. Even those close to the administration admit that the formulas used to justify tariffs were misleading, making the situation far worse than anyone anticipated. Incremental, thoughtful reforms could have achieved some goals, but this scattershot approach shocked the market into chaos. Trump didn't just push the U.S. economy into crisis, he also made American consumers pay the price. Tariffs don't just affect businesses. Every single American will now be paying more for imported goods. Prices are skyrocketing, inflation is rising, and workers are losing their jobs. Things Trump is doing aren't making America better, they are ruining the country's infrastructure and alliances, and destroying its economy. He's taking away all of America's allies, and the country is becoming a pariah on the world stage. Zelensky, I love him. I wish he was our president. I knew at that time, I started crying because I knew it was something big, and I knew this was a historical moment. Today, I do this for my grandchildren. The price the American people are paying for Trump's attempt to protect domestic industries is the collapse of the very economy he promised to revive. Those promises seem to be getting buried under a wave of crises caused by the very tariffs he imposed. U.S. consumers are facing soaring living costs, and the struggle is only getting worse as tariffs spread. It's not just the stock market, even everyday Americans are starting to get tired. Goods are more expensive, consumers are boycotting American products, canceling trips to the U.S., and even booing the U.S. national anthem at sporting events. Trump's tariff policies have sparked extreme reactions from both sides of the border, and now Canada isn't sitting idly by. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced that Canada will impose a 25% tariff on all U.S. cars that don't comply with trade agreements like USMCA. But unlike the U.S., Canada isn't acting recklessly. They have a clear strategy and are not playing around in this game. Canada strongly criticized the U.S.'s actions and issued a warning. They foresaw the challenges ahead, and drawing from experience guiding Canada through the 2008 financial crisis, they prepared. Canada has sent a firm message that they won't tolerate unfair trade practices and will respond strongly to any unjust tariffs from the U.S. The price Trump is paying is the backlash from international partners and the loss of trust from the American people. Now, what we know this time is that the Chinese government has asked its carriers to stop taking delivery of Boeing aircraft. Earlier, Beijing ordered the country's airlines to suspend deliveries of Boeing planes. Over 2 million containers are stuck, tariffs are soaring, prices are skyrocketing, and China just cancelled thousands of Boeing orders. Who will pay the price as this trade war escalates? The trade war between the U.S. and China is creating a storm in the global economy. Ports in China, including Shanghai and Guangzhou, are facing unprecedented congestion, with millions of containers stuck and unable to be exported. We are witnessing severe consequences directly impacting the U.S. retail industry, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. With Trump's decision, tariffs on Chinese goods have risen from 25% to 50% on strategic products like electronics, pharmaceuticals, and clothing. Have you noticed this when shopping? Prices for phones, laptops, and clothing have gone up by 5% to 15%. Just last month, over $300 million in orders from major U.S. retailers were canceled, and forecasts predict that 45 million households in the U.S. will bear this price hike in 2025. Imagine that. Just one push from tariffs can make you pay more for a t-shirt or a new phone. Think about the phone you're holding in your hand. Did you know tariffs have made its value go up significantly? Now you'll pay extra for something you could have bought for less. That's the price you pay in a trade war. U.S. companies are in a state of panic over Trump's tariff decisions. Giants like General Motors, GM, and Apple have started shifting production away from China, moving to Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and Indonesia to ease the tax burden. But the consequence? Thousands of American workers, about 14,000 at GM, are now facing the risk of losing their jobs. It's not just the U.S. suffering. China isn't sitting idle either. They've cut thousands of Boeing orders and suspended contracts for U.S. aircraft parts. China has ordered its airlines to stop taking deliveries of Boeing jets, and sources tell us that Beijing also asked carriers to halt purchases of aircraft-related equipment and parts from U.S. companies, costing Boeing billions. Boeing now expects a 10% production cut this year due to these bans. Who's truly affected? It's the American workers who will face job losses. And don't forget, when a giant like Boeing suffers, the entire global aerospace industry shakes. Now, we're facing a terrifying prospect, a global recession. Experts are warning that if these tariff levels aren't adjusted, we could see a severe recession hitting as high as 30% by the end of 2025. Even major financial institutions like J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs have raised the likelihood of a global recession to 60% this year. Why is this happening? Global supply chains are being disrupted, and inflation is rising, but the price we'll pay is much higher than that. With supply chain disruptions and these tariff policies, nearly 2 million jobs could be lost in industries related to imports and exports. This doesn't just impact workers in manufacturing, it could trigger a massive wave of unemployment in other sectors as well. This price isn't just being paid by companies. It's the working Americans, ordinary people who are facing higher tariffs and no opportunities to find new jobs. We are witnessing a shock to the labor market. Millions will face the risk of losing their jobs, and this isn't some distant future, it's happening right in front of us. You probably know that it's not just the US and China being affected. Countries in Asia and Europe are also facing strong impacts from this trade war. Developed economies like Japan, South Korea, and EU nations are witnessing a slowdown in growth due to high tariffs and disrupted supply chains. Global businesses are scrambling to find solutions to maintain profits in such an unstable environment. We are in the middle of a major economic war, and no one can predict when it will end. General Motors announced today it is slashing its workforce by as many as 14,000 employees. 14,000 jobs lost, 5 factories shut down, and Trump still thinks a 200% tariff will save the US auto industry. Don't worry, GM just showed Trump that his "America First" rhetoric is nothing more than a fairy tale, just like that border wall with Mexico. What GM did next caught Trump off guard. They flipped the script and forced him into silence. GM, the US auto industry giant, just made a shocking move, cutting 14,000 jobs and closing 5 factories in the US. This isn't just a blow to the economy, it left Trump dumbfounded. Imagine Trump like a 10-year-old losing his favorite toy, fuming because he can't seem to protect anything. But here's the big question. What did GM do to make Trump cry quietly? Instead of sticking with Trump's America First strategy, GM ditched it for globalization and started pouring billions into electric vehicles, EVs, a field Trump never even heard of. GM invested over $20 billion into EV research and development, while Trump only had tariffs and empty tweets. It's like Trump is out there defending American industry while GM is focused on securing the future of the world. So who's really winning this battle? Then Trump hits back with 200% tariffs. He probably thought 200% was the magic formula that would make car companies beg to return to the US, but in reality, it was more like slamming your hand into a concrete wall. Car stocks plummeted, and investors were running around like deer in the woods after Trump's announcement. But looking at the numbers, the reality is laugh out loud funny. GM dropped 3% in stock, but just a few days later, GM bounced back thanks to international revenue. In 2024, GM made over $32 billion in revenue from international markets. Meanwhile, Trump was busy tweeting nonsense. While Trump is busy fighting tariff battles, GM has been preparing a global strategy for years. GM knows that if they keep their focus solely on domestic production, they're bound to lose. And Trump, listen up. One wrong move from you could cost millions of jobs. But GM, they didn't make that mistake. Let's look at the numbers. In 2024, GM produced over 40% of its products outside the US. GM invested $1 billion to expand factories in China and India. That's right, China and India, places where tariffs can't touch GM. While Trump sits back blaming things he can't control, GM is running the global game. If Trump ever tried to write a book called Globalization Skills, it'd be a bestseller. Just kidding, it wouldn't sell to anyone. The US auto industry is slowly dying. 2 million cars won't be sold in 2025, and that should wake Trump up. Car manufacturers like Hyundai, Toyota, and Nissan have already started shifting production out of the US to avoid tariffs. Let's make a funny comparison. Hyundai and Toyota now produce over 50% of their cars in countries outside the US. GM has invested $5 billion in electric vehicle factories in Mexico. And what's Trump still clinging to? His America First policy, not realizing that GM has already found the new path and is investing to stay ahead. The real question is, does Trump realize his policy is like a plane flying into a headwind? GM is making major investments in electric vehicles and dominating the industry, while Trump is still stuck in a cycle of unrealistic tariff policies. While GM rises as a global leader in the EV market, China is seizing the opportunity to take over the electric vehicle industry. China has ramped up investments in EV technology and battery production, while Trump is still carrying around his trade war playbook, which, let's face it, he probably forgot about long ago.